This episode of UDSP is brought to you by Audible. For a free 30-day trial, head on over to audible.com/GameBreaker. Free 30 days, and you get yourself a book.
GameBreaker TV.
I love that music. Hello and welcome to UDSP Unicorn Duck Shadow Puppet here on GameBreaker TV. This is episode 39 for March 19th, 2014. I'm Mike Byrne, aka Magic Man, and joining me, like he does every week, Mr. Sexy himself, Farhan Siddiqui. How are you, sir?
Doing well. Got our pre-orders going. Did you get yours?
I did.
Ready?
I did.
Yes.
I know.
Oh, good
it's
go.
exciting. We're getting
It
close.
is.
We're getting close, and we've got a lot to talk about. So let's kind of just get right into it. We've got... Last week was kind of a download of everything. Today we've got Carbine getting serious. Goodbye beta, hello beta weekends. More post-NDA talk. I do have some questions. Last week I kind of picked your brain, since you're a little further in the beta than I am, about dungeons and mechanics and things like that, PvE-oriented. I want to take that talk and kind of go into housing a little bit later, and even faction choice, so we'll do that. But first, I think we should start with the website. We got the UI overhaul a little while ago. Was that going to apply to menus? I don't know. We've got some more peeks at what might be down the pike, but a new website is a good way to start once you have the official launch. Overall impressions, what are you thinking so far? I've seen this similar style where, it's not multiple pages, everything's on one page. Arcade, their website does this same type of thing where it's one long scroll from top to bottom, but you can jump. What do you think overall? Were you digging it?
Yeah, it's the super trendy thing to do in web design these days. So clearly, they have like a new web design team that just wants to show off a little bit. I like the little animated GIFs of the videos. It's sort of like, it's like, oh, look, motion.
Yeah.
Which is pretty neat.
I mean, it definitely fits the game. You got to give it that.
Yeah.
Their art style is just plastered all over this thing. And
yeah,
I like
it's great.
I think they've done it pretty intelligently, though. They do have the videos in here, like the dev speaks and stuff like that. One thing I didn't like on other sites that I've seen this is when they try to put the video actually in each of these segments, these pages take a buttload of time to load when you do that. And one thing that I did like the way they did this was the videos are embedded, but you've actually got to click to go to them to save on the page load. All in all, the damn thing's pretty. It's really pretty.
Yep, very nice. The only qualm I have with it is that if you try to pull it up on a mobile device, it's not really mobile friendly.
Yeah, it doesn't look like it would be.
Yeah, they are aware of that. They said that they are looking into trying to update that for the mobile. I'm not. It sort of surprised me, like how they sort of missed that would be a thing that they should probably handle right from the start. But hey,
One thing though
nice.
that I did like here, and I want to kind of call this out because if you aren't in the beta, if you haven't played WildStar at all yet, you probably have a bunch of questions about quests because you've heard an awful lot about experience and your character gaining levels and then your path gaining levels, and it's kind of confusing if you haven't actually gotten to jump into the game. In their PvE section, they broke this all down. I mean, they had the quests, the path missions, challenges, public events, ship hand missions, adventures, dungeons, raids. They've got it all here. Kind of nicely clears it up. If you haven't been in the beta and you've got questions, they're probably answered here already.
Yeah. It's a really nice, just quick summary of everything, and it sort of puts into account, because like a lot of times, if you haven't actually like watched a stream or played the game or whatever, you don't even realize that public events is a thing, because that's not something that they really talk about. But yeah, they're totally there. They're actually, you leverage that system really, really heavily, like throughout all the content. Like adventures are controlled by public events, dungeons are, everything like has these little things, and I mean, like it's just a way of them controlling the scripting. But there are also some really, really cool ones out in the open world. Like I know that in the like around level 20, right before you go into Kelvareth, which is one of the dungeons, there's this really, really awesome public event that sort of you follow one of the big Dominion leaders. His name is Torek Antevian, and he's like the leader of their like vigilant church or whatever. And you're sort of like storming the place, and you're just like follow along with him. You fight some big bosses along with like a bunch of NPCs. It scales dynamically with the number of players that you bring in. There's like little objectives. It's really, really neat, and it's something that just no one really talks about, because it's, this is something that like Jeremy Gaffney has said like before. It's really hard to market WildStar because they have so many little tiny things. It's like, wild dungeon adventure raid, ship hand public event.
What do you
PvP
make of this
arena,
mystery section? It just says the mystery. Can you reveal the ultimate secrets of Nexus?
I think that's just
like a standard little pluggy type thing.
I don't know if there's like a little ARG kind of thing hidden into it. I know that some people were like looking into it, but there is like the whole Elden plot line. That's the, because
they're not known for ARG stuff at all. I mean, they've hardly done any of that.
No.
Besides every dev speak that comes out.
And the hoverboard thing, my God.
Yeah.
That was huge. But, yeah.
And then, of course, obviously, they've got their pre-order page up. Of course. Finally up. Came up today. Also, we've got the link on GameStop on GameBreaker.tv if you want to check
Green
that
Man
out.
Gaming today. Actually, we got a link to Green Man Gaming's got a 20% off coupon on there, so get that from GameBreaker.tv.
Hey, look at that. Player is responsible for all applicable internet fees. Well, shit. Well, I'm not buying it.
They won't pay for the ISP?
Right. I'm not buying it. I thought Jeremy Gaffney was paying my Verizon bill from now on. Son of a... All right, so here, we're going to talk about this a little bit later, but right at the top of the page, after a little game description, we do have the factions. Learning about each race, Exiles versus Dominion. Gamebreaker Nation is currently in the midst of voting which side will hold the Gamebreaker Nation Guild. No secret, I'm Dominion.
Yeah.
No secret, I voted for Dominion, and I would not be opposed to mailing you a cookie. If you... No, I'm not going to mail cookies. Don't vote Dominion and then ask me for a cookie. I'm not going to do it. But we'll get into...
I'll email you a picture.
I'll email you a picture of a cookie. But we're going to get into this a little bit, because there are pros and cons to the way both of these start. So I do want to pick your brain about that a little later, since the NDA is gone, when we get into some of the other chat. Because I've played both at the beginning, and it was clear one felt better off the beginning to me. I don't know if you feel the same way. We'll kind of dig into that in a little bit. In the lead up to launch, however, betas, they will be a changin'. There will be a changin'. And big shout out to Quantumly Certain on Reddit for putting together an awesome little chart. That it's kind of sad that the situation needs a flowchart, right? But
people like making flowcharts anyway. They'll make them for anything.
It is one of those situations that does kind of need a flowchart, though. What's going to happen with beta? Because the betas are going to be gone, and then we're going to be moving into the beta weekend model, with 4 of them going into launch. So this little chart kind of shows you when, by answering the questions, when you're going to get access, what level of access you're going to get. Are you currently in the beta? What level are you at right now? Yeah, and answer, are you going to pre-order the game? And takes you through it. Great chart. Kudos to Quantumly Certain. You're in everything, right? I would imagine at this point you've pre-ordered. You were already in beta. You had some high-level characters, so you get to take part in everything.
I just stay along the yes line, just keep going down. Yes,
just all the way down.
Yes.
What do you think, though, overall? I mean, we've seen a lot of games doing the whole weekend beta thing now. That it really wasn't a big thing until maybe Rift. I mean, Rift kind of started off the whole beta weekend, and I know some other games did it around that time too. But now we're starting to see that as a trend in beta testing. What do you think of the shift, though, going from a full open beta to just the full closed beta to the beta weekends this late?
I don't think that anyone can argue that beta weekends are amazing for hype, just because like everyone wants to get in, and it really pressurizes everyone to get in at a certain time, so everyone is just sort of looking at the game all at the same time. Whereas when you have like a continuous beta, then people sort of get spread out a little bit. The server seems a little bit emptier. Everything is just a little bit like, you know, more normal. And I think that obviously the longer betas are much better for testing, just because you don't have that pressure of, okay, I have to do everything in such a little amount of time. And then, I mean, I don't know about you, but every time that I participated in one of the weekend betas, at least when, you know, before this one, I didn't have the experience of being in a long beta before that. So I would always, you know, go in there with a set of things that I wanted to check out inside the game. But then after the beta weekend ended, there would be like so many more things that I realized, oh, I wish I had looked at this thing as well. And so it just feels like all the more just, oh, I just want to keep looking into it. But, you know, I think that this was a reasonable compromise, that, you know, they did a pretty extended long, like more than, I think, a year of just regular beta that they had going on there. Mostly continuously. They did take that long break between like the last summer beta and then the winter beta, but they had, you know, beta content going in there. They were chugging at it, iterating at a pretty reasonable, you know, schedule, and then, you know, now they're going to go into hype mode. They got to, you know, get the people marketing, and I think that that's almost as important as getting the game polished and clean and tested and everything. Obviously, as a hardcore gamer, I am much more partial towards a lot of testing and getting everything really, really shiny. But I mean, I do understand that if the game is going to succeed, you have to build up the hype. You have to market it really well. You have to make sure people don't burn out too much. And so going with a beta weekend does make a lot of sense in order to actually make the game be successful long term.
Now, and you kind of mentioned it too. We're beyond testing at this point. I mean, we've got a date. It's 3 months away, less than 3 months away. It's polish time. It's now big crunch time. And I remember, particularly with Rift, way back when, I was really looking forward to Rift and took part in their alpha betas and then in their beta weekends. And I played it so much, I didn't want to play the damn thing when it came out. I was so burnt by the time it actually came out that it was just like, oh, I don't want to do that. Now with WildStar and other games that are in beta right now, I've been a little more careful about how much time I'm putting into it, particularly with WildStar, which is one that I'm looking forward to, not only because I think it's going to be a good game overall, but I think there's just so much hidden in there. With the way Carbine works, there's so much small stuff that they're just waiting for you to discover that I almost don't want to discover it right now when it doesn't matter, right? I want to wait until the damn thing actually matters. So I'm all in favor of the beta weekends thing. I think it's a bit odd that they're shifting this late, but there's no arguing that it's a great way to stress the servers, right? You know exactly when everybody's going to be piling on, which it's crunch time. Get the polish and test the servers.
I mean, they definitely had a lot of stress testing done.
Oh, yeah.
So I expect the experience to actually be quite good. You know, for all things that I could say about WildStar's server, you know, load and everything, the way that they did, their server team is actually like really, really on the ball. They're almost constantly, like throughout the entire beta, there would almost always be somebody in a device chat, like, you know, one of the Carbinites just responding to people, letting people know what's going on. If something was going wrong, you know, answering questions, kind of doing that kind of thing. And they would be really quick with the server restarts most of the time. I mean, like, around Christmas time, it was a little bit like, okay, maybe 3 hours or so. But, hey, a 3-hour turnaround when there's, like, probably, like, 2 people in the place, that's actually, like, pretty all right, I think. So,
now
they've been really good.
We are going to see open beta sometime in May, and that makes sense. Yep. We think it just maybe that's the last weekend?
I'm not sure. I mean, they haven't given
open beta weekend just kind of shoved in there, or what?
I think that they might be better served to have it a little bit longer, just because I know a lot of people are really holding out to sort of see, like, okay, I want to experience it at that point. And so having a slightly extended, maybe like 4-day, 5-day kind of thing, for people to sort of sink their teeth into it and really get going, like the open public that haven't pre-ordered, would actually be pretty smart for them. But, who knows? They haven't actually given any real details about when the open beta will be. So,
now, that's a really good point. That's a really good point. I mean, we have an untested IP. There's obviously going to be a big chunk of the audience that maybe didn't get into any of the betas and is now not going to pre-order because they're still not sure about an untested, unknown IP. Actually, I agree with you then. It probably would be wise to make that 4 or 5 days because it's not... As much as we want to call it open beta, right? Open betas just aren't open betas anymore. They're get in there, and so you can play the game to determine whether they're a marketing tool. They're not an actual testing tool anymore. They're not going to be making any changes that are mission critical at the end of May when it launches on the 3rd. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah, the thing about the open beta is just that I think that, especially with something like WildStar, where it is an unproven IP, you want to get it big enough so that a little bit of hype that builds up at the beginning of the open beta will allow other people to have time to install the damn game and get into it because
it's not tiny.
Yeah, exactly.
Tiny.
Everyone who gets in on the first day of open beta is probably already following the game. What I'm concerned about is the people who get in on the second and third day, and if it's only a weekend, it might not be enough time for people to actually hear about the game and then try out open beta.
Take a look at this calendar again.
Yep.
That's second beta weekend. April 4th. There's something going on April 4th. I can't quite remember what it is, but that date seems to ring a little bit of a bell with me. Am I the only one there? Let's put an open beta weekend right on top of the launch of one of our competitors. Can't blame them for trying. It's a Blizzard tactic, right? Just put something on your competitors, even if it's just a beta.
I mean, to be a little bit fair, they do have them evenly spread out one every 2 weeks.
Oh, come on. You're such a Carbine fanboy at this point, man. They had to have. They were like, okay, April 4th, and then we'll make them every 2 weeks before that and after that. There we go.
Maybe.
They had to take that into consideration. It's genius, right? If you can pull some people away from a new launch, more power to you. On the inside of the game, we have screenshots of some more new UI. Now, 2 weeks ago, you and I kind of picked apart the whole old school UI and the new one that they put in, and we really liked the new one, but we had concerns whether it was going to apply to menus or not. Because particularly the menu system wasn't all that grand, particularly with the quests and the codex and the journals and all the additional things. So we have a couple of pictures here. Now, obviously, we don't know if these are going to be the final launch items or not yet. But let's take a look here. First, we've got the abilities pane. Looks a hell of a lot more streamlined than it used to.
I'm not a fan.
You don't like it?
of the new. I mean, it looks nice, but actually in use, cause we actually got to use the UI that we're going to show screenshots of today. That was in the very, very last patch. So we got a week to try it out before the closed beta ended. But it's sort of, there's a bunch of annoyances to me. One thing, obviously, is that the name of the ability gets hidden. That's not a huge thing once you actually start putting points into it, because you probably will know the names of most of the abilities. But if you're coming in as a new player, maybe that's a little bit weird that, okay, you have to mouse over everything to remember. If you don't remember what all the icons are, then that might be a little bit of a thing. The other thing that really annoyed me was that the minus sign is now on the right side. So when you add an ability to your bar, you're clicking on the left side of the screen. When you're taking it off, you're clicking on the other side of the screen, which seems like it's not that big a deal and it looks nice, but in actual practice, it's just sort of going back and forth as I'm switching things around. You can right-click at the bottom to remove abilities from your screen, but you can't right-click on the actual thing, so it's just...
All right, I can go with you.
Clicking.
I can go with you on the plus-minus thing. It's not very intuitive, and I would imagine that that's probably going to change, because it's just not intuitive. But really, did you really just complain about having to mouse over? You didn't even have to click on something. just put your mouse over it, and it tells you the ability name. I like it. I mean, it looks a lot more streamlined. These are, particularly with the abilities and the amp pane, these are things that are a lot of information that you're trying to convey to players in a really tight space. I'm okay with some of the things being removed and maybe in the tooltip mouse over.
I just don't see the point of the buttons being so damn fat, like for like the tier 1, 2, 3, 4, like they're just so big and it's taking up so much space that I feel like I'd rather just have it be a lot just smaller and cleaner, or I don't know, it just feels weird to me, especially like the super fat like tier 5, tier 4, and tier 8 points. I mean, I get at least now it does visually show that it costs 5 points in order to take tier 4 and tier 8, but that's the only thing that I like about it.
What do you think about then the way that it goes with the UI that we reviewed 2 weeks ago, or was that last?
Oh yeah,
I don't even
it
remember.
matches.
It totally matches.
Much
It's
better.
dead on.
Yeah.
I don't know. I like it. I agree with you on the plus minus thing, but I think you're just being picky, Farhan. I think you're being picky.
Yeah, it is.
Farhan doesn't like fat buttons.
There you go. I like skinny.
Let's take a look at the amps tab now. This wasn't too much of a change. Visually a bit different, but still the same core functionality. This one I can kind of give or take. It really didn't strike my fancy. I didn't think it was a massive improvement or a step back. I'm just kind of meh about amps.
The biggest change amp-wise is just that they completely streamlined the actual system. So basically, what you can see now is that every single like sextant, I guess you would call them, would be is individual. So before it actually was that putting points into one tree actually affected the number of like progression towards the next tier of the surrounding branches. So which was sort of nifty because it was sort of like, okay, I'm putting points here and it affects the next two. It helps me push things up, and it made it a lot more complex build-wise because you'd be like, okay, I'll put some points here and then put points here and then put points here, kind of thing. So you could like work around some of the things. Basically, what they did is they got rid of all of the crappy amps, or at least most of them, and just streamlined the system heavily. Every single class has the exact same layout now. I mean, like, some of the obviously the abilities themselves are different, but the layout itself is like that, and each branch is individualized. In terms of actually usability, in terms of this, before you actually had to like zoom into a quadrant in order to actually get the clicks to be like really responsive. So it's really nice that you don't have to zoom in anymore. I don't see the point of a radial design anymore because it is like a hexing. It looks cool, I guess, but now that a branch doesn't affect the other branches at all, it might as well just be vertical progression of like a nice normal talent. I'd actually prefer it to be like that so that they could have icons instead of just everything being circular, just a bunch of circles that you're just clicking on, and you have to like mouse over to get tooltips.
Farhan hates fat buttons and hexagons. All right, well then, how about this one? Again, it still fits with the theme, I think, though. Visually, it's a nice job. How about this then? Here's the codex, which the codex was one of my biggest gripes in the previous UI. It was not intuitive at all. This looks to me to be a ton better. And the font isn't micro anymore. I can actually read what's being displayed here.
Honestly, I don't remember the old codex well enough. Just, like, mentally, to me, that looks exactly the same. Like, the buttons look a little bit stylized differently, but I mean, I never used it, so it's like, okay, I guess. Sorry.
All in all, if they kind of adapt this across the board, though, I love the way that the UI changes in-game were made. And these are kind of sticking with that theme. I get that maybe there's a few functionality things. Again, that's maybe the polish we're talking about for the open betas going through there. Overall, I love all three of these. And if the rest of the menus follow suit, I'm on board. I like the whole UI revamp was badly needed for a long time. And I think they nailed it. I think they did really well with most of the changes. Most of them.
One UI thing that I really hope gets a lot of love is obviously this is part of the codex, so I don't know how much it looks differently because I can't click on the button. I'm like clicking on the picture; it's not doing anything. The achievements tab. I don't know if you looked at the achievements in the old UI, but it was so ugly that I instantly stopped caring about achievements just because the UI was so bad. I couldn't keep track of which achievement was where. The organization was not so great. And usually, I actually I'm a bit of an achievement hunter. I like getting a lot of achievements and doing that kind of thing in World of Warcraft and other games. But in this game, it was just like, like the UI was so bad. There's like there weren't points associated with individual tasks. There wasn't like a running score total or whatever. So there was like a lot of stuff that I wish would get a lot of love in the achievement section, but hopefully it does. I don't know. I can't click on the codex though. I don't know.
Font is still an issue in some places too.
Yep.
Font is still a big issue in some places where I've just given up trying to read it. I'm like, I don't care enough anymore.
Hopefully we can just get an add-on that will just change the fonts throughout the whole game or something like that.
Or you could get an add-on that reads it to you.
Yes, one word at a time.
Just you could get a font that just go ahead and reads the whole thing to you. You know, kind of like Audible does. So happy to have them as a sponsor. Audible.com/GameBreaker. If you hate small font as much as Farhan and I hate small font, then Audible's definitely the service for you. Let's check it out here. Audible audiobooks. We're going to give you free 30 days and a free book of your choosing. Now, there's no WildStar fictions in here yet, but most of you that are watching this are already familiar with the Worlds of Warcraft. And if you're into that type of lore, they've got plenty of them for you on Audible here. Great way to have books read to you with, for the most part, I haven't really come across too many of the narrators that are not good. Like there's some that are my favorites, right? Will Wheaton, I thought, did a great job with Ready Player One, as far as making voices for characters and things like that. And a lot of the Warcraft books follow suit. Great for when I'm driving from PA to New York or PA to New Jersey for my career. So if you've never checked out this service and you're asking, Bern, how can I help GameBreaker in a time of difficulty right now? Well, of course, GoFundMe.com/GameBreaker is still available there. But if that's not an option for you, the best way to support us is support our sponsors. And Audible's been one for a while. We're so happy to have them. Check it out. Audible.com/GameBreaker. You're going to get 30 free days and a free book. Great stuff. Great stuff. Check them out. Support GameBreaker sponsors. That helps support us. Now, the NDA dropped last week, and I kind of picked your brain about dungeons and telegraphs and things because I readily admit you are much further invested into the beta than I am because I don't want to burn out. So I've dabbled at best. So I kind of picked your brain. Right. I don't want to Mike burn out. Anyway. So I kind of picked your brain about the PvE aspects of things, and we've talked PvP on the show before, too. There's two things I really, really want to talk about. First off, we kind of teased it earlier, the faction choice between Exile and Dominion. Right now, GameBreaker Nation has their poll going on the GameBreaker Nation forums to decide what our guild will be. And it's pretty close. It's pretty close. Exiles are edging out right now, but it's pretty close. I want Dominion, but
yes,
if players have been in the beta, to me there's a distinct difference between the way these two start off. The Exile story is infinitely more interesting at the beginning of the game. To me, the Dominion feels... I'm not saying that the Dominion storyline is bad. Don't get that impression at all. I enjoy it, but I just felt more invested in the beginning portion of the Exiles than I did with the Dominion, where the Dominion seemed to be the same military terms thrown at me 900 times over and over and over again. Is that just me? You've been invested in it more. How do the factions play out once you've hit the mid-levels and beyond?
I definitely... first of all, I do agree with you as far as like the level 1 through 3 experience goes. The Exiles had like a much stronger showing, I think. Just like everything just feels a lot more action paced. It feels a little bit more urgent, like what you're trying to do because you're being invaded at the time by the Dominion. Whereas the actual Dominion Archship is more of a training ground. You have some holograms that are sort of misbehaving, I guess. They aren't responding correctly, so you have to kill them or whatever, but for the most part, it's not really, doesn't feel pressing. The whole science part of it with Artemis Zen is a little bit weird because you have to like sort of run around. There's a little bit more platforming going on in there compared to the Exile side, so it just feels a little bit odd. Like, what am I doing over here? What am I doing over here? The Vigilant Church thing also is a little bit odd. But honestly, like, isn't it better to be going with a Artemis Zinn as your NPC of choice rather than Belle Walker, just like this hillbilly scientist or whatever. It's just like, oh my god, what is she every time? Like, because I got both factions. Like my Exile's admittedly only level 36, so I didn't get that far on Exiles, like all the way to the top. But as every time I would run into Belle Walker, I'd just be like, what is she doing in these short shorts? And it's just like, oh my god, like I can't take it seriously as like the scientist or explorer kind of person, like equivalent to Artemis. It is just like, no, it's no contest. So
there's no choice here. It's Dominion, right? I mean, I'm
It's
not
Dominion.
wrong. It's got to be Dominion.
No, I mean, like, and I was actually posting about this with one of the groups of people that I used to play Guild Wars 2 with. They were trying to decide what their faction choice would be, and I do agree that really early on the Exile side does seem a little bit more cohesive. You know, in the pre-show, somebody in chat was talking about how the Dominion feels a little bit too militaristic, so it feels like a little bit, you know, like, I don't know if I like that kind of story. Everything just being really military focused, but I will say that I honestly. Like, if you like Wild West, then yeah, go ahead and go Exile, because I would say go Dominion anyway.
If you
go
like
Dominion anyway, even
if
though
you like
the Exile.
the Wild West, you're on your own type of approach, roll Dominion. If you like the militaristic, everybody's going for the common good, and we're the rulers, then also go Dominion. That's awesome. Just you know what? If you're gonna play this game, you should go Dominion. I mean, that's basically the way I narrow it down. If you're gonna play, go Dominion.
I just like personally, I didn't really enjoy like the super Wild West kind of thing because it just felt really just like the pacing just seemed odd because first of all, like I'm just gonna X out all the RN quests because like there's like nature lovey, super hippie. Like I just don't like it at all. But you know, like besides them, I can ignore them mostly. Like I would be okay with just ignoring one race. All right, I can get past that. But then for the Exile quests, like they almost constantly seem to be either fighting the Dominion, which is cool because you know the Dominion are cool, or they're fighting a bunch of mercenaries and sort of like having this sort of rabble-y Wild West kind of thing going, and that's neat. The storylines aren't bad; they're actually like pretty decent, but I just felt like it felt so peripheral to Nexus and the Nexus story and everything else that was going on. The Mordish do actually have some of the coolest storylines in the game, like some of the Mordish stuff that I saw, but I don't think that it holds up, especially compared to the Dominion. I think later on, Dominion gets a lot stronger. They have like a lot of political intrigue kind of stuff between the Cassian Lowborns and the Highborns. There's a lot of tension going on there. The Makari have like the whole spy thing, which sort of is equivalent to the Mordesh thing, so they sort of even out over there. The Chua are just like diabolical. Like every time you get a question about Chua, you know you're gonna get some crazy device that you're gonna like blow people up with or shock people. So I mean they're more for comic relief than anything else. I don't think that there's like a big Chua overarching story that is incredibly important.
So if we've learned nothing else this episode, we have learned that you hate fat buttons, you're not a fan of hexagons, and nor are you a fan of hippies.
It's not that I mind hexagons, it's just that it didn't make sense. Anyway, but hippies, no.
I don't like hexagons. I prefer a pie chart. I prefer a nice circular pie chart.
It just is more perfect. You know?
More
What can I
perfect.
say?
I don't think that's more perfect. Perfecter. Whatever. The other thing I wanted to ask you about, we kind of ran out of time last time, housing. Okay, I mean, that's a big deal for a lot of people, is the player housing, and WildStar is kind of going hog wild with the whole plot of land and in the sky and being able to dig and find dungeons and things and all kinds of exciting housing elements. To me, personally, though, housing has never really been the selling feature of an MMO to me, and quite honestly, in the games that I have had housing, I just personally, I invest like a lot of time into it initially, like day 1 and day 2 when I get access to the house. And then I kind of don't care anymore as far as adding cosmetics and adding furniture and stuff is. Do you think housing is going to be more of a big deal, particularly at Elder Game or End Game?
I think that it actually is a big deal, and I actually go pretty similarly to where you are, where like once I get into something where they let you access housing, I play with it for a little bit, and then I'm like, okay, I'm good with that. But the thing is,
And then if somebody, why aren't you going to do this? Well, what's the reward? Well, you get some housing items. I don't freaking care. I don't care. I just
But,
don't.
the thing is that I was leveling when I was playing Exile. I was leveling it with my wife, and she spends so much time on the damn house, just like organizing everything, putting everything together. It's just like I suddenly got it. Like at that point, it's like, oh yeah, there's all these other players who aren't as hardcore who would just
who
like,
aren't me.
Yeah, and they love that stuff so much. And to be fair, there is some stuff like, you know, I would agree with you that if the main reward for something was just a housing item, I would totally be like, whatever. I won't really care about that much. But the thing is that whenever you're doing a dungeon, you're going there for the loot, you're going there for the experience, you're going there for the, you know, whatever rep reward or whatever it is that you're going in there for. But it's really, really nice when you kill a boss and like this epic quality housing item drops and you're like, oh, that sounds actually pretty cool. Okay, I'll roll on it. It's just like this extra loot that you just sort of get reinvested into the house again. Then you like go back to your house, you put it up, and you're like, oh yeah, that's sort of cool. And then, you know, for me, that's like, okay, till the next time that I have this random housing item drop again. And I mean, for me personally, like a lot of it is econ based because I'm like, oh, it dropped and it's not buy non-pickup. I'm gonna go sell it. I just got some plat,
money.
you know, kind of thing. Exactly, yeah. And I do expect that, you know, we're gonna talk a little bit about crafting in just a minute here, but
yeah, because that kind of goes hand in hand with the whole housing thing here.
It does, but like especially, I think that the most money making one will probably be architecture, just because of how much money people are going to spend on just decorating their houses. Just because I saw, like, okay, my wife is like super into the decorating the house and getting everything looking nice and doing all that stuff. She was literally spending all of her money on that to the point where she didn't have all her skills. I'd be like, oh, can you put some heals on your bar? I don't have that heal.
I don't know. Oh my god.
What? Yeah, I think so.
I don't have that heal, but you should check out this couch. It's really badass.
It's really nice.
It's really
and did you see what I did with these flowers? I put them on in this vase, and then I put that on the table.
Yeah, so we're gonna need to get a second healer today, because I need some money.
You know, if you go check out the, I think Zyback, you know, streamer, YouTuber, he has some videos of a few different houses. There's actually some really, really cool stuff that people did in the beta with their houses. Like somebody actually made like a skate park on the roof of their house with tables. They like put them together to make these like curves and stuff for the hoverboards. And like, it's just like really cool what people can do if you're even a little bit creative, or like you'll probably be able to come up with something really neat because you can do a lot of stuff. They have this like. There are like a few buttons that if you like click them, you open up the advanced editor that lets you fine tune everything by the angle. You can copy and paste transforms from one object to the other because you can scale everything up and down and rotate everything however you want. There are also like really like a lot of the complaints that were coming in early on was that, okay, the inside of the house is pretty cool to decorate, but the outside is like very set because, you know, they have the plugs that you put in and you can't really decorate most of the plugs.
Right.
But like so I just remember that from the beta forums that somebody was like, you know, you should let us because there's a lot of plugs that are purely cosmetic. They're just like, it looks cool. It's just a plug that looks cool. Why don't you let us put stuff on the cosmetic plugs? And the guy was like, okay. That was a one-word response from Carbine.
Why not?
Okay. Yeah.
Now, is housing forced on you? Because the feeling that I got is that there is an element of you do have to do some of this stuff when I was playing through the beta. Even if you don't invest a ton of time into it, you can't really just ignore it totally because it's not your thing.
It's pretty easy to minimize the amount of time that you have to do to get a lot of like the reward out of it, because that's basically what I was doing, especially since I had so many characters, and at least initially in the beta, every character like had their individual house, so you couldn't like share a house over everyone. I do believe that they, in the most recent patch, or maybe in like coming up, they're making it so that all of your characters are automatically roommates with one another, so you can just pop over to someone else's house to get all the benefits of one of your other characters' houses. That was a big request that they responded to.
17 Dominion players sleeping in one house. Also.
Yeah, you can totally do it. And I mean, that's what I was doing, because when I was playing on my Exile, I was investing almost no time into it, except for when I was playing with my wife. But I got all the benefits of her awesome house, because I was just roommates with her. I just, you know, stuck my character inside of her house whenever I wanted to log out. I got all the extra rest experience, and it was just fine.
It sounds like...
I had to pay for it, because she was like, I want to buy this bookshelf. Give me 10 gold. Okay. Okay.
Sounds like grandma's boy. You're referring to your wife as a roommate. She's my roommate. Don't you mean your mom and dad? They're my roommates. But so here's a question for you and your wife that obviously sunk a lot of time in this. Is there like a how should I put this? Is there like a real progression to this? As far as endgame, or is it stall out and it just becomes kind of cosmetic and ancillary, or is there actually a progression piece to the housing?
I mean, so a lot of it is just cosmetic. So you're just trying to make it look better. There are so individual items give you a buff to your rest experience that in different categories. So they have like something that will make the aroma of your house better, or the comfort of your house better, or the lighting better.
Congratulations, your house doesn't smell like ass. Nice job.
Yeah, I know, right? You had to put like a spice planter into your house, but you got it now. But so there is a little bit of progression that way, where you just you want to have better stuff in your house so that you get more rest experience. That is actually pretty easy to sidestep. Like you can just get a lot of the reward by just dumping like a little bit of gold into it, like 10 gold in, you can get almost all of the buffs that I found for the rest experience.
Haven't we heard others like raid buffs and stuff coming out of this too?
Yeah,
right?
So the plug buffs. So there are like challenges and housing dungeons and buff stations that you can build inside of your house. Those are plugs. They aren't like cosmetic stuff that goes inside the house. It's like the plugs that go on the outside. Those have upkeep. So you do actually have to continually put resources in to maintain them continuously. It's not like you build the raid buff one time and you've got it forever. That might be like a gold cost. It might be sometimes you actually have to get another schematic built for the thing again. But for the most part, it's usually like I feel like it was a gold cost to rebuild the thing and maintain it. It's just like a continuous goals thing that you would have if you wanted to maintain all of like the big buffs and have the challenge running and doing all this other stuff, which is almost always worth it, especially if you're going to do the challenges, because you get rewards from doing the challenges. So it's like a little bit of investment in order to continually run it.
It sounds like completionists are in for a freaking nightmare.
You can't put all the stuff in one house. No, that is a little bit disappointing, just because you can't I don't believe that there's any way to expand your plot to just get more slots. I think a lot of people will probably roll an alt just so that they have another house that they are roommates with that they can then stick a bunch of other plots down on or whatever. I know that I will almost certainly be doing that just because it's like a 3-hour investment to get to level 14 or whatever and have my another house and have all the plots that I want. But yeah, so I think with that in mind, like, if you can do that, then I don't see the point in limiting the number of slots besides like a technical, maybe that's just something that they don't want to take up the space for it or whatever. But whatever the case is, like, I didn't feel like I needed to everything in my house, just because like I could easily just find somebody in my guild who actually had some of those stuff, and I just become neighbors with them. It's like a separate friends list that you have for specifically to your houses. You can go visit them. You can set up different things. So like, let's say you have a like one of the plugs that you can have is like a resource node for your crafting materials, either like a garden if you're trying to get plants for potions or whatever, or like a mining place, like you got a bunch of mineral nodes or leather or whatever you want. And you can actually set it up so that you can share a percentage of the resources with neighbors or whatever. So what you can actually do is you could easily set it up so that maybe you have to go out of town for a little while, but you don't want all those resources just to go to waste that you invested in putting up in your town. So you could just change the sliders over so that they can go in, mine for you, and you'll get a percentage of the resources. They'll get something for their time, whatever you want to give them. And
here's the tip.
But it's a really nice social system though that supports people actually coming in, going, and people actually like. It was surprising. You set your house to public, people will just start coming in just to check it out, just to see what's going on.
Oh yeah, we've seen that with Rift and their dimensions. Make it to public. I've sat in a dimension. Speaking of dimensions, by the way, side tangent here, a little sidebar. Q from GameBreaker. Creepiest frickin' dimension in Rift that I've ever seen. I walked in and it looked like I was trying to be inside the TARDIS, and there was this pile of like just decrepit Christmas stuff just like all stacked, and creepiest shit. I had nightmares for days. So I hope I don't know what she's gonna make in WildStar if she intends to play, but that was some creepy shit there. But it sounds like and this is something that another game Final Fantasy 14, the one I play, is really struggling with is the whole crafters being invested in the game and being important to the economy. And it's something that's sorely lacking right now in Final Fantasy 14. This sounds like it could be what Square Enix wanted their crafting to be, where they are really relevant to the economy and more importantly, can make some money on the auction house, right?
Yeah. Architecture especially, like, you can tell that, they sort of wanted a lot of, like, armor smithing or weapon smithing or whatever to be a lot more utilitarian. For the hardcore gamers who aren't super into crafting, it's still accessible to them because you sort of go in, there isn't a random chance unless you want it to be there kind of thing, like unless you're trying to get a little bit extra overcharge or whatever out of your item, you can sort of mitigate all those random elements and just sort of do your own thing with those things. Architecture just sort of like throws all that other thing. You're like, if you're into this, you are into crafting. You want to do the crafting experience. You want to play the auction house. You want to do that because like it's a little bit misleading.
If you like this, congratulations, you're a crafter.
Yes,
and you didn't
if you
even
like
know
architecture, you probably are a crafter. Kind of. The thing is that it's almost misleading when you actually pick up the profession. Like whenever you're like on the UI, I don't know if this has changed. Obviously, it's a UI thing, but when you pick up any profession, it tells you which ones pair with it well. That makes sense. If you're an armor smith, you would want mining. If you're a leather worker, you would want survivalist or whatever to get leather. That just makes sense that they would give you a pairing. When you pick architecture, they're like survivalist because you cut down trees and you get wood. And I was like, okay. But then you start building stuff and you're like, oh, I need relics. Well, okay, so I guess I need relic hunting. Oh, I also need a lot of ore. Oh, okay, so then you really actually have to like get all of the different resources in there. Yeah. They all sort of come together. So you actually do have to be pretty active on the commodities exchange if you want to actually make any money.
And by the way, you can make legendaries. Just saying. By the way, you can go ahead and craft those bad boys. Now, our last question I have for you. Our producer, Dom, couldn't figure out a nice segue here, but he does say that size matters, so I don't know what that means. I have no idea. Settlers have the biggest sacks.
Yeah.
12-slot sack. Settlers. Anyway.
Come for the pre-show.
Come for the pre-show, stay for the show. But he did want me to ask, how big does the world feel to you? You play a lot of MMOs. Compare it to some stuff that all of us are familiar with. How big does the world feel? I got a sense from the beta that the zones themselves were a pretty decent size. I would liken them to the initial zones in World of Warcraft as far as size goes. But I didn't get into the big wide open world that you did when you were hitting the levels 30 and beyond. How big is the scope of the entire area for Nexus?
I think that most of the zones are actually quite large. They are pretty big, they're pretty open, and they have a lot of content packed into them, which makes them feel a lot bigger too, especially if you're like roaming around, you like sort of look at your map, you're like, okay, I've been questing for an hour, and you realize you've made like this much progress on the map, because really they just had like a quest node here, and then a quest hub here, and then a quest hub here, kind of thing, and they sort of like really pack in all the content into the zone. Also, I know a lot of people were sort of since in beta we were getting our hoverboards at level 10 just to make beta testing a little bit easier, a little bit quicker to get through. I don't remember exactly the level that you were supposed to be getting them in launch. It's either 15 or 25. If it's 25, then it's like, damn, those zones are big.
Yeah.
Because you are walking a long way. And I mean, like, actually, as one of my gripes, the flight points, they're a little bit rough because you don't actually see them on the map as you're walking around. So I was constantly missing flight points that would connect stuff together. So it was like a little bit.
Yeah, but doesn't that kind of play into the whole settlers being able to build things and generate NPCs and flight points that maybe aren't on the map automatically?
That is incredibly important, actually. Yeah. Like settlers are really, really key in building those because they are really just almost like every other quest hub later on it has one of those settler built things, and if you don't have them there, you're just like, oh my god, I wish I had a settler over there, not even just here, because you're like, okay, if you are a settler yourself you can build it, but then you're like, why didn't someone else over there build their station? Damn it, you're holding this back, kind of thing. Yeah, I mean, they are decently big. It does feel a little bit sort of spread out, just because of the way that the progression works. A lot of time, the later zones, you travel to them via spaceship from your capital zone, you can walk to a lot of them, like because they are on continents. There's 3 continents first of all, so it does feel a little bit spread out just because of that. And you don't really move to another continent until around like level 25 or so. But when you do move to another continent, then you're just like, oh, okay, I'm over here. But it does feel like later on in the game, since almost every time you can get to a zone via spaceship from your capital city, it feels a little bit almost Star Wars-y, where you were like just taking a spaceship. It's not as bad as Star Wars. I just want to say that because you don't go through a freaking
no docking
space
gates or
station. Yeah, exactly.
Right?
You don't have 5 loading screens between each one, but you only have one. But it's still like a little bit like that. And Far Side is specifically. It's actually a decently large size, but because of the way it's set up, so Far Side is like their moon. Like you travel up to the moon around level 32, I think, and that lasts till like 36. And on Far Side, you have the main the moon plot, but then they also have these biodomes, which are actually really really cool looking. Like they're like either a lush biodome, and there's like a deserty biodome, and it's sort of like where the Elden are doing some of their experimentation on different organisms and things like that. But since all like the biodome is really contained in together, and then there's another biodome, and then there's the actual space. It feels really really sparse there, even though it's not. Like if you actually measure the amount of time that it takes you to get from one place to another, it's actually fairly decent, and it's not like you're just spending all your time traveling. It's like there's content all along that way. But it does feel a little bit spread out there just because there is a lot of instancing. Not instancing, sorry. Like the zone is an island. You can't travel to it directly just by walking there. Does that make sense?
Yep.
You have to go through a portal. It's still open world. It's not instanced. That was a mistake by my part. But yeah, so that zone specifically feels a little bit spread out. But then once you get to what's the zone after that? Wilderrun, I believe. Then it starts getting big. Malgrave is huge, and then there's like 3 Grimvault zones. So yeah, it gets pretty big. Size matters.
Size matters, and down with fat buttons, Mr. Farhan Siddiqui. You can follow him on the Twitters at Unindel. That's UNINDEL. I'm Mike Byrne, aka Magic Man. You can follow me on the Twitters there at MagicMan1, MAGICKMANN1. Obviously, make sure you're following GameBreaker.tv on Facebook and on Twitch. We've got some special stuff coming up, so if you're not following GameBreaker Nation's Twitch, you need to do so. Twitch.tv/GB Nation. This coming Monday at 7 p.m. Pacific, that's 10 Eastern. Myself, Mr. Kiggles from After Dark fame, and crew will be doing our Diablo 3 Reaper of Souls countdown for launch on the 25th. So we'll be playing Diablo, we'll be talking about the changes to the game and the upcoming content and all that good stuff. Hang out, make sure you're following twitch.tv/GBNation. That stream will not happen on the stream you are watching now. It will be on GB Nation. That's the Twitch channel. And if you're not in the GameBreaker Nation, there's no better time to do it than now. We've got
go
just
join
about
and go
every
vote
game.
Dominion.
Yes, yeah, join so that you can get access to the official GameBreaker Nation special forums and vote Dominion. Get the Mumble access, get all the game access, find out who's playing what and where. We'd love to have you. Until next time, gang, stay safe. We'll see you out on the servers.